Welcome to A State of Mind. This is Julian Royce. I'm recording this here in my office where I work as a therapist, meditation teacher, and facilitator, and I'm excited to bring you a new episode because I truly believe in the power of conversations to change lives. Please check out the show notes for each episode to learn more about the topics covered and our guests, and check out the affiliate links of all our sponsors. That is a wonderful way to support this podcast, as well as visiting our Patreon page to support the podcast directly. I want to share with you about kanna. Kanna is an amazing herb from South Africa. The scientific name is Selatium tortuosum, and it's been used for centuries to support mood, emotional openness, and connection. I've been working with a company called Ka Empathogenics here in Boulder, and I have an affiliate link below so you can order it and support the podcast. And I just want to share a little bit more about it. There's been some amazing scientific studies showing that people taking kanna actually score higher in compassion and empathy and openness, and it's a mood uplifter. It helps you feel better, almost like drinking a strong cup of dark chocolate cacao might be something similar, but it's different than that. It has its own unique feeling. One cautionary note is it's not recommended if you're taking SSRIs or other drugs that act on your serotogenic system, and you should talk to your healthcare provider. So this isn't healthcare advice or medical advice, but kanna is legal and it is powerful and potent, and it can be a helpful ally in your path. So if you're interested in exploring it more, check out the link below, and I look forward to seeing you there. Another way you can support this podcast and improve your overall health and wellness is through Shilajit. Shilajit is a traditional mineral-rich resin. It's been used for thousands of years in the Himalayas, and it's really incredible. I have access to really high-quality Shilajit that's been tested and made sure that it doesn't have any harmful additives, nothing like that. It's from the Ural Mountains of Russia, and you can message me at the link below in the podcast show notes if you're interested. And I'll just share a little bit about Shilajit. It's actually formed from ancient plant matter that's been compressed over centuries. It's very high in fulvic acid and trace minerals. It helps support mitochondrial function, energy production, and nutrient absorption. And a lot of people today are using it for vitality, endurance, cognitive clarity, overall resilience. It can taste a little gnarly, but I like to drink it in the morning with warm water, which is a traditional way to take it. And if you haven't tried it out, try it out. It's definitely been a game changer for me, and I think it's a great way to start off your day. Another way you can support this podcast as well as your health and wellness is to check out the blue light blocking glasses from EMR Tech. There's an affiliate link below in the show notes, and they're making really high quality glasses that I think are also pretty fashionable. There's different glasses for during the day, for during the sunset, or for during the evening. And I think this is a simple thing that we could all start doing more that can really improve your health. It'll improve your sleep at night if you wear them during the day and at night. There's research showing that blue light suppresses melatonin. It disrupts our circadian rhythm, negatively impacting our sleep quality, our recovery, and our nervous system regulation. And so as more and more of us are spending more time on screens, having things like good blue light blocking glasses that you actually like to wear, I think can be really helpful. So check it out below. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to be here today with Brigitte Mars. Brigitte, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
My pleasure and honor, Julian.
Yeah, and you were actually one of the first guests I had on the podcast when I first started it all those years ago. So if people want to comb back through the archives, they can find our original conversation, which was in your beautiful home.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so for people who don't know, Brigitte Mars is, you've been an herbalist for many, many years. You've written 19 books at this point.
I'm finishing the 19th.
Okay. That's amazing. And
books on natural medicine, on herbs.
Great. Yeah. And you've been a teacher at Naropa University for a long time
For 40 years.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I'm a mother, a grandmother, and I live right downtown Boulder. And I'm also a psychedelic sitter and an end-of-life doula. And I love teaching people about eating the weeds. So it feels really good to be able to do something that you feel is good for the people and the planet.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And we were next door neighbors for a while, which was really sweet.
I love that.
So I would look out the window sometimes and see you leading people on an herb walk. And I joined a few times. And
yeah, people think they need to go like way out into the wilderness, but I'm also really into showing people it's right outside our doors. I mean, some of the most useful plants are the ones that you see every day. I mean, really, it doesn't have to be like rare exotic plants from Tibet or China, like, dandelion, nettles, chickweed, purslane. These plants are the things that are really surviving adversity. And, right now everyone's so concerned about pollution and stress and
Mm.
fluoride and chemtrails and preservatives. But I really want to lead people back to like learn to eat the weeds because they have figured out the key to survival. They're adaptable. And so Colorado has been in somewhat of a drought.
Yeah.
And we see that all the grass is dead, but the only things that are surviving are the dandelions. And if you think about the resiliency of wild plants, nobody plants them, waters them, weeds them, mulches them. Matter of fact, they try to get rid of them and they still come back. So we need to embody that weed wisdom so that we can adapt to adversity.
Yeah, I love that. That's well said. Yeah, the wisdom of the weeds, the resiliency. And I think there's something really profound about what you just shared, that in our own yards along the sidewalks are plants, and some of them, they're worth knowing about and appreciating. And we just have this thing in our culture where we separate humans from nature, and we separate, our home from the wild world around it. And I think a lot of indigenous cultures, right, they were so integrated.
Yeah, they didn't think, oh, we can't have dinner tonight because we're out of something. It's like, what do you have around you? And I actually did live in a teepee in the Ozarks for 2.5 years and pretty much ate wild edible plants. So I really, like to encourage people that we have been really cut off, thinking that everything has to come from a market. And, right now we're thinking about how can we eat more local and be more environmental. I mean, certainly supporting farmers markets, but all of these yards that I see, they could be full of things for salad. Like I love that when I make a salad and I'm out there collecting things that are in my yard, preferably my backyard where there's not dogs and cars going by, but in the backyard, I'm looking for, lamb's quarter and dandelion and nettles and chickweed and purslane. And when I make a salad and it was growing 5 minutes before you're eating it, there's a kind of life force that you don't get from the health food store, something so free and fresh. And think about how long ago was your organic kale from the store actually in the ground. So something to think about. We've been bamboozled big time, I think. And, what really gets me is people will like work so hard in their garden and pull out the weeds and throw them away. And then they'll like get in their car and use gas to drive to the grocery store to buy spinach from another continent or something, you guys are missing out. Or same thing, you let those nice organic wild apples fall to the ground and then you drive to the store to buy commercial apples with pesticides on them. So,
and they've all been wrapped in plastic and there's all the transportation costs.
Yeah. And I'm noticing like these waxy coatings. So, really the whole food industry has been very much based on, market value and how we can get people to buy things. And, we don't realize that even a lot of things from the health food store are still processed food. It might be organic or gluten-free or vegan or something, but it's still, organic macaroni and cheese in a box. So just, eating, I like to encourage my students and friends and clients, like, eat all the colors of the rainbow. Every one of the colors of the plants tells us something about what type of phytonutrients there are.
Yeah. It's interesting. Something I've noticed is in our culture, a lot of things that are considered like hippie and kind of out there and like, oh, that's too alternative. And then over a few years, they become more and more mainstream because they're actually based on science and reality. And an example for that in my lifetime is organic food. Like I would remember like when I was a kid, it was just starting to be a thing, organic food. And I remember all these other kids making fun of it. And now it's, any grocery store has an organic food section. Another example is being gluten-free. And I remember trying out different diets when I was younger, and my family and other people would like make fun of me. Oh, you're afraid of bread now. And now like there's so much research, the wheat that's been genetically modified, sprayed with Roundup and glyphosate, and how terrible it is for the environment and then for us and our digestive system. And so it's not that some people have a true wheat allergy, but I think the story that's becoming more and more apparent to so many people is we've been kind of poisoned by the big ag and by the
Mhm.
pharmaceuticals and by fertilizer, pesticides, and genetically modifying food to be, resist the effects of pesticides.
It's
So,
almost like if you watch an hour of commercial TV, eat this food and then take these drugs. Because if you eat this food, you're going to need these drugs. So, yeah, it really is quite revolutionary, Julian. And something I do like to say is, the hippies were right about a lot of the things because
mm,
many of these things like yoga, meditation,
mhm,
organic gardening, natural medicine, alternative education, medical cannabis,
mhm.
sacred use of psychedelics,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
recycling, alternative energy. These were all things that we were doing on the commune, and now we're realizing that this is what we really need to do. And again, it's not like the hippies invented these; they were very often tapping into ancient wisdom.
Mm,
So when people says, "Oh, that's some kind of like new age thing, healing with herbs or healing with crystals," I mean, these are ancient things that have been done all around the world. And it's almost like there's been a resurgent interest, but it's not really new. And, the age of Aquarius that people
mhm.
talk about. Aquarius is the sign that corresponds to using the best of the ancient wisdom and combining it with the modern. So it's not
I
like
love that.
we're not trying to go back to the cave. We're trying to integrate that ancient wisdom with what is um, s- being proven in science. But very often, science is proving what the ancient ones already knew.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, there's real ancient wisdom that's worth studying and understanding more. And hopefully we can even add to it or find new ways or new ways of expression. I think a big part of my life calling is the captured by this word integration in the sense of like helping our culture integrate. I got so into meditation when I was younger. I went to India and Nepal and I was doing these long retreats and I met some incredible meditation masters. But I've realized over the years like it's about finding we had this in our own culture too, and it's been lost more or less. Like there was so much mysticism, in Western Europe and in America, and there were so many great contemplatives too, like people like Walt Whitman. Even I think every generation has them, and so part of what I interested to talk to you about is like the way that we tend to look to other cultures for things that are profound. Like we look at indigenous people, we look like China, Tibet, India, and I think we really need to like claim and own this within our own culture, like finding our own ways here in America in the 21st century. And we can honor all these other ways and then we can find our own way. And it can be part of this beautiful tapestry rather than this feeling, which is really a kind of limiting negative belief that there's something wrong with us, and to access the sacred or the really healthy or the organic or whatever, we have to go outside. And what would it be like to make our culture more healthy, right?
Well, we have to realize too that, many of our ancestors came from somewhere else. And,
Yeah.
certainly a Russian father and a French Canadian mom, but whose ancestry came from France. There was this drive to like, let's be American and let's, we're not going to wear the beret or the wooden shoes, or we're not going to speak the home language. There was this desire to integrate. And so, really, eventually, we're all just a mixture of everything. And
Yes. Thank you.
we also have the benefit of tapping into the ancient wisdom, the literature, certainly in the realm of natural medicine. I love that I can learn about herbs from Asia, Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, Korean medicine. Although my great love is always going to be learn the plants that are growing around you. But I love
Mm,
seeing the similarities, and you can even use the wisdom of, say 5 element theory from Asian medicine, or the doshas of Ayurveda, and apply it to the plants and the foods that grow here.
mhm.
But again, the borders are kind of imaginary, but what it does really seem to get down to is Mother Earth,
Yes.
because we're all sharing that. And, we can learn so much from Indigenous people. And we're so blessed we can go into a grocery store. I know that from where
Mhm.
I live, I can walk to 8 health food stores that sell organic
Oh,
food now. I
that's
mean,
amazing.
it wasn't like that before. Not every town is like that, but this is how, a mainstream this has really gotten. But we have access to plants and things from all around the world. It's really quite amazing. But again, bringing it down to basics, fresh fruits and vegetables, colorful things like that, growing a garden, learning, nuts and seeds. These are all things we should have access to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's such an interesting point too around the kind of hippie movement, how right they were in a lot of things. I definitely have a soft spot in my heart for hippies and all that history and culture. And there's a bit of like a love-hate thing in me that I think I got from the culture, where it was like this rejection of like the excesses and all this stuff. But to bring it back to psychedelics, I mean, that's like, maybe that's the best example. The hippies were so famous or infamous, depending on your perspective, for psychedelics. And now, all these years later, so much science, so many people are being helped by them, and a kind of rediscovery. And we're talking about like the psychedelic renaissance, and it's part of the work that I'm doing. And people can experience real life-changing healing and empowerment and growth. And it's no longer considered as like the domain of the hippies, so to speak, whatever that means. It's something that's a bipartisan issue. It's something that vets are doing. I've talked to people from all political persuasions, and the same thing with health. Obviously, it doesn't matter if you're right wing or left wing. We all want to be healthy. We all want to eat real organic food and have access to that, and we all should. I want to live in a world where organic is the norm and non-organic is the exception, right?
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah.
And, I also want to say something, because I have long identified with the hippie culture.
Yeah.
My kids are named Sunflower and Rainbow. I lived on a commune in a teepee, I did it 100%. And I think that we often think of the stories, but then it led to, drug overuse. And did people really have a container for safe set and setting? I will also say that a lot of the free love stuff of the hippie thing, STDs put the kibosh on that, because, the pill was a new invention in the, kind of came out in the late 50s, 60s. So it fostered the sexual revolution. But then, it's almost like the universe expands and contracts, and we find a balance.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just wild abandon and do lots of psychedelics and just dance all night, because you're going to burn out really quick. And so this idea that, that these are really powerful medicines, and they should be used in a safe set and setting. And that's something, that Tim Leary talked about. When I was 19 years old, I found myself living in Canada with Rosemary Leary, Tim Leary's wife, when she was exiled for helping him escape from prison. So I got a really great early download on creating safe set and setting, and to use these medicines with respect, with people you know and trust, and really being prepared for the journey so that you have a positive outcome. It wasn't about doing a lot of drugs. It was about using this energy in a wise way so that it's beneficial. Because, I know certainly a lot of people use these things at festivals and concerts, and it can be quite overwhelming. And it's also not going to be a deep personal experience if it's just about, dancing in the band and thousands of people.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. And you're a true elder of the community here. And to go all the way back to those early pioneers, it's amazing. I've definitely helped people who've experienced trauma from psychedelic experiences, often in a loud, chaotic environment like a concert or something. And so that is a risk and worth noting. And I think our culture is maturing, and we're finding our way. And part of that is talking about it more openly and sharing information to help people make right choices, rather than relying on the police or the doctors. Or it's like, let's inform everyone and let people make the choices for themselves.
And I've noticed that the Zendo tent, a chill out place where people can go at festivals, get really full when they start playing scary monster music.
That makes sense.
They should be aware that people might be in a very open, sensitive state. So why not create a container of beauty and calm and health? And so anyways, that's where I'm at.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. My mom is named Rosemary, and my dad had the name Sunflower for a while. So they were Sunflower and Rosemary. If you look at photos of my parents' wedding, both of their hairs were down to their like thighs. Like, so their hair was so long. So my parents were definitely hippies back in the day, and then kind of transitioned. I mean, they still have some of those values, I think, but outwardly they look more normal now, so.
And, then there was a movement later on, it might have been the 80s or 90s, the zippies, hippies with zip.
Huh.
So hippies that are like creating companies and writing books and,
Okay.
like doing stuff out in the world and teaching internationally. So I always kind of like that term too. Yeah, like a hippie with zip. And I think there was certainly a lot of negative press, and probably a lot of fear that your kids are going to go off and join the hippies and not want to join the draft or go fight in Vietnam, and they're going to grow their hair long and wear weird clothes. And, now I have grandchildren and I think, oh my God, their clothes are so weird and their music is strange, but I'm sure our parents were worried for us.
Yeah, there's always something each generation wants to push boundaries or find something new for themselves. And that's, it's beauty and creativity in that, obviously. But you are working, so your 19th book that you're working on is actually a memoir about some of these early life experiences. Do you want to share about that?
Yes. So most of the books I've written have been on health and herbs, like Rawsome, The Desktop Guide to Herbal Medicine, Addiction-Free Naturally, and Natural First Aid. I wrote a book on mental health, Natural Remedies for Mental and Emotional Health. So many like scholarly books that are textbooks at Naropa. But for a long time, and because I've taught at Naropa for so long, I end up telling a lot of stories. And I started writing the stories down. So I'm working on I like to call it a racy 60s memoir, but it actually starts in the 50s and goes to almost the present time. And it's almost ready, not quite yet, but it's called Wildflower Child, A Tale of Sex, Psychedelics, and Natural Foods. So it's sort of a play on the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But for me, it wasn't just any drugs. It was, things that were curated that were for evolutionary, spiritual purpose, and certainly natural foods, although there is a lot of rock and roll in the book too. Certainly a lot of shameless name dropping. But I think I have a story to tell. And again, so many of the stories of the hippies or the musicians that ended up going to rehab or, despair, or they disappeared into the wilderness. And because I became a mother at a very young age, I had this sense of like responsibility, like, hey, I need to get up in the morning and make homemade granola and get my kids off to school. And I'm writing it down. So I'm never going to be so far out there. I can't really function because my kids are, were the priority. And even though there's definitely a lot of, antics out there, and I think people will really enjoy it. But I feel that there's also a lot of herbal wisdom because I so believed in natural medicine. I really put it to the test, not only with myself, my kids, many, many students, clients over the years, getting feedback from people about what worked. And so when people say things like, oh, like herbal medicine, I trust the science. I want to say herbs have been used by millions of people for thousands of years. And, I work in a pharmacy part-time, a holistic pharmacy, and we see lots of drugs recalled and a lot of things that were proven by science that are, now being recalled. So again, we don't always know how intense the side effects might be. But, even in my lifetime, I know as a kid, we put mercurochrome or a mercury compound on our skin if we had a cut, and mercury fillings, that was a thing. And
wow.
if
that's
a kid,
that's a really good point. So now we would never do that because mercury can be poisonous.
And I know when I questioned that years ago with a dentist, they just said like that's quackery. But it's interesting. Quackery really comes from the term quicksilver, because after the bubonic plague, the next big plague in Europe was venereal disease, and mercury was used as a remedy, which could kill you. And they would say the quack is coming to town. So the quack is the one that administered the mercury.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's interesting.
And but just since we're on that subject, we all know the term "mad as a hatter" from Alice in Wonderland. Hat makers used to dip felt in a mercury solution so they could shape the hats into these fanciful shapes, and eventually the hat makers would develop neurological tics, and they'd say, "Oh, they're mad as a hatter."
Interesting.
Because the mercury was really devastating their nervous system. And of course, there's mercury in tattoo ink and in some immunization. So like Question authority. Yeah, I think that really comes down to, that was one of Tim Leary's taglines, question authority. And I think he got it from Marshall McLuhan,
Huh.
who wrote something important. I can't think of it at the moment.
It's interesting to reflect on, like, we've had so much progress, in our society with technology and with drugs and all the medical advancements. And it seems like there's been this long process of this kind of medical establishment who are the authority holders, and they're telling us, what's right and what's wrong. And then when you look back over the last 100 years, you see how those goalposts keep changing. We get told, there's some meme I saw online, like in the 80s, people were told not to eat butter, not to eat eggs. And then in the nutritional advice keeps changing. The medicines keep changing, the things keep changing. And there is real wisdom in looking at what humans have done for thousands of years and at least honoring that and at least considering it's been time tested.
Absolutely, Julian. I like to joke that, like, health food trends change like Paris fashion collections, because we've seen like gluten-free and, vegan, vegetarian, keto, paleo.
Right.
The Mediterranean diet actually seems to be one of the more balanced. And I like to tell people, you may need to try different diets at different times in your life. What works for a 20-year-old yogi living in Key West, their life might be totally different when they go become a lumberjack, not a jacket, lumberjack in Alaska, or during pregnancy, or your elder years or your college years. So sometimes we try different things, and it's not one size fits all. So. Yeah, it's really interesting how the trends change, but it does seem to be getting back to the basics. And what you were saying about wheat and gluten, if you think about the word gluten, it's kind of like glue. It's a protein that makes things stick together. And what do we do with that gluten is we make pesto and pasta, which is like paste, so glue and paste. So again, not everyone's allergic to gluten,
Right.
but I think it's not so much that wheat is the enemy; it's how we've treated it, like you
I
were
agree.
saying. And many people say they can go to Europe and eat pasta, and we treat it with bromine in this country, and that's an issue for people. So, we're doing our best to figure it out. And when I come back down to it, I just keep saying, learn to eat the weeds and be more resilient, and, keep learning your whole life.
Yeah. Yeah, the gluten one is interesting. I've started, I eat sourdough bread sometimes now, and I'm good with it. I try, I get organic. But I think there's a number of things happening with gluten, just to share my thoughts, because I've been kind of looking into it over the years. I think that the wheat has been genetically modified, and then it's spread to almost all the wheat grown in this country. It's sprayed with Roundup, glyphosate. Obviously not good. But then another piece that isn't talked about as much is the wheat is harvested, dried, and ground, and then often stored for 6 to 12 months, and then combined with different preservatives and additives to make it shelf stable. And so if you go in the store and buy a box of crackers, it could be a year, 2 years old before you're eating it. Is that going to be good for you? Is the life force still going to be in that product? Probably not. So,
And it used to be that every little house on the prairie had a stone grinder.
Right.
Things were ground up fresh.
Right.
And, it's all that. So, and of course, I find sourdough bread works a lot better for people. And there's also more traditional grains that haven't been as altered, like einkorn, spelt, kamut. I love quinoa, which is technically not a grain, but a seed in the same family as spinach and amaranth and rhubarb. The lamb's quarter family, the spinach and Swiss chard are in that same family.
Amazing. Yeah. And
Not rhubarb.
There's also the wisdom in eating locally. I've heard you talk about that, and like the plants and things growing here, it fits more with the environment that you're in. I think there's wisdom in that too.
And, I love turning people on to edible flowers, not from the florist company that you would order online, but flowers are the sex organs of plants. So last night I had someone over for dinner, and there were black locust flowers and rose petals and calendula and mint flowers and arugula flowers. It's just such a gift to say, wow, I'm feeding you flowers. It's so beautiful.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And I've been at your house and gotten salad with a bunch of flowers on top, and so beautiful. And one of the books you wrote was on like aphrodisiacs and sexuality with
right,
herbs.
the sexual herbal. I wrote
that.
Yes. Well, I was married for 38 years. I've been married twice. and I really realized when studying Tantra with my second husband that a lot of people don't come into relationships totally healthy. Like you learn all this stuff about sex, but then, oh, you've got menstrual cramps or fertility issues or prostate inflammation or you're having hot flashes
Mm-hmm.
and so I figured there was a real need to write a book on holistic gynecology.
Mm.
And I really was delighted to explore all that because people need help. They've got, yeast overgrowth and bladder infections, and someone needs to explain the different methods of, contraception and, even things that, we don't, the education, like, making love with someone for the first time, or someone who's maybe a different size, or being with a pregnant woman, or so I really
Mm.
wanted to explore all that and talk about holistic gynecology as well, so that we could approach sexuality. And there's also a lot in there about, libido and aphrodisiacs rather than just take a pill. How do we tonify our bodies so that our libido is strong and healthy? And, there's also chapters on the fine art of flirting and finding a mate and healing the spirit from a broken heart and
Oh, amazing.
surviving
Yeah.
infidelity. So I love the last third of the book too. There's a lot of ideas in there, and keeping your love alive, as well as, dealing with needing lubrication or something.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I've studied traditional Tibetan medicine, and a lot of the traditional medicines have an aphrodisiac component because my understanding, part of what's happening is it's increasing blood flow. And if you increase blood flow through your body, it's bringing that life force energy through the body. It can be very healing.
And
So,
also in Asian medicine, strengthening the kidneys,
hmm
that the kidneys are the water element of the body,
hmm
which would correspond to what you're saying, is going to govern the teeth, the bones, the hair on our head, libido, our sense of hearing. And so we tend to see the body almost like car parts, like that doesn't work. Here's a pill, or we could do an operation or something, but really seeing how it all works together. And of course, one of the big libido um, things that to consider is that people are exhausted. They make love, at 11:30 at night when they're tired and they have to get up at 6. And
hmm
so we have to like create special time for
yeah.
being with our beloved. And, if you wanted to be good at something you were doing, you want to be a good doctor or lawyer or a school teacher, you're going to keep learning about it. And so
Yeah.
I think it's really important to be open, even if you've had many lovers or been sexually active for many years, there's still more to learn, and
hmm
be open to learning more things.
Yeah, definitely. Well, so I'm curious, like with your memoir that you're working on, any stories that come to mind that you want to share with us?
Oh,
I don't even know
goodness.
where to start asking you things.
Well, I will say that, the story starts out because my mom's water broke on an airplane. So it starts out
Oh.
like, up high in the air, and they make an emergency landing. But, I went to an all girls boarding school, Miss Hall School for young ladies,
Okay.
and I was expelled 6 weeks before graduation
Jeez.
for smoking cannabis.
All right.
Yeah. And, rather than like, oh, I'm going to Bard College and going to major in theater and minor in world religions, my life totally changed. So 3 months later, I was living in the Virgin Islands and learning about, I was managing a natural food store for
Mm.
someone from the mainland. So the story, there's a lot of, I will just say, there's a lot of characters in the book. People that people my age would know. Crosby, Stills, and Nash are in there. Alex and Allison Gray, Yoko Ono, Tim Leary, Rosemary Leary, the
Mm.
Allman Brothers.
Okay.
And of course, because a lot of it takes place in Boulder, I'm sure many of you will know the people, but there's also a great history of the whole natural foods industry.
Mm.
Dr. Bronner's in there, Jack LaLanne,
Uh-huh.
David Wolf, Victor Kulvinskas. So there's kind of that
Yeah.
whole evolution.
Amazing. And then, and you were here in Boulder, like in the early, when did you move to
I
Boulder?
came to Boulder in 1977.
Okay.
I came to attend what was then called the Rocky Mountain Center of Natural Healing or something, and then it morphed into Boulder College of Massage. But I already knew about herbs from living in the teepee and like harvesting elderberries and raspberries, living without electricity. But I thought in order to really be a good herbalist, I need to learn anatomy, physiology, nutrition. And I also studied with William Lassassier, a wonderful teacher who was here. And remember, I was going to go to college and major in theater. And I always said, someday I'm going to work on Broadway. And I did Broadway in Arapahoe at Alfalfa's Market for 20 years. And then Broadway in Alpine at Pharmaca Natural Pharmacy for 20 years. So, in any case, be specific about what you wish for. But it's all been good because I feel like one of my many mottos is live life as theater. Like if you can you get to write your own script and design your own costumes and really create your living abode, your set and setting. So I really enjoy doing that. So I think there'll be a lot of stories in the book that people enjoy. There was a plane crash. Okay. There was taking LSD with dolphins. Like, yeah, a lot of stuff. 2 home births, no doctor.
Wow. And when you came to Boulder, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche was still here at Naropa University. Did you?
Yes, but I didn't really connect with him until I was at Alfalfa's Market. And I think by then, a lot of the Buddhist community had moved to Nova Scotia.
Oh, okay.
But I certainly, my kids, my daughter Rainbow went to Sun Camp with Chogyam Trungpa's son, I believe. And, like I got to see that whole evolution. But I realized when I was the herbalist for Alfalfa's that I needed to teach the community more about herbs because there were the people that shopped at the store. And I thought, because they hired me to like increase sales, I thought, well, I need to take it outside of the store. So I started teaching at the massage school and then Naropa. And I remember years ago, Snow Lion, which was the dorm for Naropa students, asked if I would teach a class on harm reduction because every year there were students who were taking, dangerous drugs and taking too much, wrong set and setting, and then ending up in trouble, whether it be, trauma, creating PTSD for themselves, or even just getting into a bad situation, getting arrested. So I started really, I thought that was really a great thing to teach. And so I teach spring and fall semester at Naropa, and in my herbal medicine class, I include topics like aromatherapy, natural first aid, color therapy, feng shui, Jedi survival skills on a perilous planet, because it's not just about know these herbs. I don't want people to think, oh, I have a headache, so I need to take feverfew. I want people to have information on what's causing the illnesses, how we can change it, how we can use more than herbs, food, color, affirmation, acupressure. So it's really very holistic.
I love that. Yeah. And one of the things I'll encourage a lot of people I work with, I think this is just true of our culture in general. There's this limiting belief that you have to do everything on your own. Like we're so individualistic. It's all up to me. I have to figure this all out. And I think connecting with herbs, you're connecting with plants. There can be a relationship there that you could actually develop. And there could be a sense of allyship, of support, of help, of something, if you're open to a more spiritual dimension or energetic dimension, something beyond yourself that's alive, that's living, that you could like call in. And even if it's, just like in an herbal tea or something, if you could connect with it in that way, it could become more meaningful. One of the things I like to share about on this podcast is if you looked at scientific studies of like all the pharmaceuticals, all the medicines that have been developed, the number one most effective medicine ever discovered, so to speak, is called the placebo. Because what other substance can beat new pharmaceuticals in clinical trials like so many, like half the time or something? It's hard to create a new drug that can beat a placebo. What that means to me is our minds, our hearts, our souls are so powerful. And it's not a mistake or an accident. It doesn't mean it's not working. It means that we can heal ourselves. And I think herbs can open up even more doorways to that.
Well, I think most of us have probably seen pictures on social media of like magnifications of a blade of grass or a butterfly wing or a dandelion pollen, and how it is so resplendent with sacred geometry and beauty. So I like to feel that when we're imbibing plant medicine, we're imbibing sacred geometry, beauty, mandalas, fractals, color, things so small we don't even see them with the naked eye, and that how a lot of pharmaceuticals are made from petrochemicals. But of course, many drugs originally came from plants. So a lot of the pain
Hmm.
medicines from the opium poppy, aspirin from willow and aspen and meadowsweet, even digoxin and digitoxin, very powerful heart medicines, came from the foxglove plant. And it was the wise woman of Shropshire, a witch who actually told a doctor how she was treating people of
Oh,
high
wow.
blood pressure using foxglove. But foxglove is poisonous, so it had to be refined.
Mm.
So and again, why don't they just use the plants? Well, you can't patent a plant. And if you're going to put all this money into research and development, you want a patent on that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just told people like the real answer is those dandelions in your backyard that you've been trying to get rid of, we would rather sell you some drug to help you overcome the illness that you got from spraying them. So
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
again, we get back to question authority, um, but it's not like modern medicine can't be amazing. I mean,
Right.
we do want to put our heads and hearts together. It's not us and them. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
technology is really amazing. And I love that nutrition is going to be more part of doctors' education. And
It needs to be. Yeah.
I also see certainly a lot more doctors, like certainly Dr. Andrew Weil
Mm-hmm.
has paved the path, who's an MD who uses natural medicine and writes about it and talks about it. But there was a time when you could lose your license
Mm.
for, say, just go home and have some chicken soup and take vitamin C. You could lose your license for doing that.
That's amazing.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's such a long, interesting history, and I think our culture is moving in a better direction. My brother is a medical doctor. He actually, he went to Harvard Medical School and all this stuff. He, we're talking like something like 11 or 12 years of training and study. He had one afternoon lecture on nutrition in those 12 years. So it says something about the state of the way we approach health and how crazy it is. And I think it's starting to change. But
Yeah. And again, it's a gradual process.
yeah.
And um, I'm so grateful because I know that surgery can, save lives if you're in an accident. So we're not dissing that. We're grateful for
Hmm.
all of that. But I know a couple girls, they were in a coma. When they came out of the coma, the first food they were given was like green jello. And I thought we could do a little better with our hospital food, like maybe some applesauce or even yogurt for the probiotics. We could do a
Mm.
little better. So let's put our heads and hearts together to really make a positive difference, because it's not us and them. We know that
Mhm.
people got into healing because they have a genuine desire to help people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've heard horror stories from people I work with who have, unfortunately been put in something like a psych ward in the hospital, and how there's harsh fluorescent lighting, how they're being woken up by a nurse every hour to check on them. How there's not access to nature, the outdoors, how the food can be really awful. I'm not saying all hospitals are like this, but I mean, we're in 2026. We should have a whole nationwide movement to, you mentioned light therapy, the lighting, the coloring, the fabrics on the bed, like, because people heal from a place of safety and comfort and feeling nourished, not feeling like they're in a lab under a bright light.
And we are seeing, babies that have high bilirubin are put under blue light, and we're seeing all this
Hmm.
research with red light therapy to stimulate collagen production. So I've heard that in the future we will use a lot more light and sound for healing.
Hmm.
Sound healing is another thing, and I think again, there's so many things that we can try, and sometimes you have to try a few things. And I guess one of my big missions is to get people to take more responsibility for their own health, rather than say, I have high blood pressure, my doctor's going to fix it. Well, you can help as well. Maybe you're
Hmm.
going to meditate. Maybe you're going to cut back on coffee. Maybe you're going to listen to calmer music. Maybe you're going to
Hmm.
switch to a better quality salt.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then if you do all that, you may not need the pharmaceuticals.
Hmm.
But if you do, they're there. But again, if we don't change what's causing the condition, very often it creeps up in another way because you didn't make any lifestyle changes.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got to have a more holistic perspective. It's almost like as all our technology advances and we become so immersed in these artificial environments, like science is having to go back and recognize, like, okay, all these natural things are really helpful, like sunlight and clean water and like touching the earth with your feet or your hands.
Well, I think that nature represents the wild, unbridled feminine nature. We have to cut it down and control it. Mow the grass, mow your lawn, keep that stuff in check. And so, of course, women weren't even allowed to go to medical school. And also for a long time, school was taught in Latin. So you had to be able to speak Latin in order to go to school. And if you're a woman, you couldn't go, or maybe you wouldn't even be taught to read. So, there's all kinds of stories like that. And then midwifery, many of the so-called witches that were executed between the 1400s and 1700s were herbalists and midwives. They were seen as going against the Bible for helping women in childbirth. And of course, these women, but again, it wasn't always women. They knew about things like contraception and, herbs that might be abortive. Like that knowledge was seen as contrary, and that could get you in a lot of trouble. And, one thing that happened, Julian, is in 1917, the Rockefeller Foundation sent one man around the country to all the medical schools. His name was Mr. Flexner. And he made a deal with all the medical schools, was that if you only teach the new modern medicine, you'll get funding. But if you persist in teaching that old-fashioned herbal, old wives' tales, folk remedies, no funding for you. So that's really what happened in this country. But we see that, in Europe and in Asia, the herbal remedies never went away. They, coexisted.
Yeah, it's such a long history there's a lot of darkness, right, with the witch hunts. I mean, it's one of the darkest chapters. And I think we're still healing from that trauma that I think is carried in our lineage. And some of this work with herbalism is certainly a part of healing that. So, yeah, I mean, it's easy for me to imagine. I try to spend time imagining a better world, a more integrated world. And we have so much potential. There's so many pieces. We have access to so much information and knowledge and all the things you're sharing. Like, it can all work together in a synergy rather than being something like herbalism versus, the medical establishment. It's like, let's work together. It's like we have amazing medical technology. Let's also honor the wisdom of the past and of our ancient ancestors.
That's really what keeps me going, Julian, is the idea but we can all do something. We can all do something, whether it's in our neighborhoods, in our own homes, with our coworkers. And we're not all going to do the same thing. But for some people, we have to find something that we're passionate about and take action, not enough just to talk about it, but volunteer, do something, study about it, write about it, talk about it. So that's okay. We can all make a contribution.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's something I wanted to ask you more about. I mean, you were one of the first professors at Naropa University. They're more or less the beginning. And that's where I went to school, and I've known a lot of people there. And it seems like Naropa University was really at the forefront of meditation and mindfulness, and some of their approaches to therapy that they were teaching, which were really radical at the time, have become much more mainstream. Somatic therapy, dance movement therapy. You mentioned sound. So Naropa was there at the forefront. I guess part of my question is, any insight you have on why the school hasn't had a bigger impact, why it isn't better known? It just seems to me like it's missed opportunities to really be a leader in these spaces. And it was originally, but it just seems like it hasn't fulfilled the potential.
Well, I have great hopes for Naropa, and I've loved being there. The individuality of the students, the creativity of the students. Naropa turns out a lot of great writers and therapists. And why hasn't it done better? I mean, I think it's really expensive to compete with a lot of schools that are so much better funded. And as I've heard, Naropa graduates don't end up owning, large corporations and steel companies. They end up being therapists and poets and linguists and herbalists and dancers and musicians. So I think it's really hard. And so they don't get the huge donations that an Ivy League school might get. But Naropa is still very worthwhile, and I'm in there as long as I can be there. And the students are so unique. I'm really, really grateful to have participated that I have. I haven't gotten as involved with all the politics of it for so long. I would just go in and teach my class, but I'm a little more involved now. I'm an adjunct faculty advocate, and
Yeah.
get to hear the inside story. What a gem Naropa is, and
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of potential, a lot of amazing history. And unfortunately, seems like it has a lot of problems from people I talked to. And when I was there, I saw organizational, like just kind of disorganized. And I'm not sure quite how to articulate it, but it just seems like it's got some problems.
But
So
a few years ago, I started whispering in the director at the time,
uh,
Chuck Leaf, the president, like, we need to start a department of psychedelic studies because the students are writing their papers on it. They're going to Peru and doing ayahuasca for summer vacation. And I know there's a big movement. And so Naropa does offer some classes in psychedelic studies. The history, psychedelic science. So I think that that's a program that if that could evolve, that would really be a wonderful thing. And I know there's been
mhm,
some legal logistic things because insurance companies are like, we're not sure about that right now.
mhm.
Um, but I think that would be a great boon for Naropa.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
the writing department,
Y-
but I also think that, Naropa was kind of built on the philosophy of the, beat poets, Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg
Yeah.
and all that. It's like, okay, but it's time to move into another paradigm. And,
Mhm.
alcohol, drugs are the beats. Like, let's get real and look at what is happening now and is going to really help therapists to be the very best therapists that can be, life changing for people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's a big subject. There's a lot of history there. There's shadow sides. There's spin scandals. We don't have to go into it all now. I think.
They all have scandals.
Um,
Even Miss Hulse for young ladies just had a big scandal.
oh no.
It was on the cover of Vanity Fair, and the New
Oh
York
wow.
Times. So
Okay.
no place seems to be oblivious to scandals. We were
Right.
actually talking about that the other
Right.
night at the party. Like whatever that scandal is, it's in every other industry too. Although we want better from our like spiritual leaders and teachers, and unfortunately
Mm,
we're dealing with this shadow side and um,
right.
mhm.
That's an interesting point. So many organizations have had so many scandals. So many churches and groups and schools and politics and this and that. I wonder if, as a culture, part of our evolution could be to get to more of a place of when we look at that history, instead of castigating the whole organization and trying to get rid of it, can we help it to heal and evolve and be better and not repeat those mistakes, like learn from those mistakes, like
Well,
rather than try to get rid of the whole thing.
well, Julian, I feel right now that, and part of it is being a psychedelic sitter for many years, is that there seems to be a big split between the masculine and the feminine.
Mm,
Like, I think people have lost trust in each other,
yeah.
whether it be, being a single mother or dealing, raising your children alone but I want to say that if I were to come up with a plan, like how can we heal this great divide between the sexes, we need to stop circumcising little boys. And even though, like, it's
Mm,
too late for most people to do anything about it, it's a trauma. Your brain registers pain and it makes you
mm,
less trusting of that nurturing world that you come into. I think we need to address that. We also know
mm,
that throughout history, rape has been one of the spoils of war.
mm.
That even though it might not be you or your generation, but it could be if we go back several hundred years. We just know that that was one of the spoils of war. We need to get clear about consent.
Yeah.
That we need to respect each other. We need better education too for children, because I think a lot of children get taken advantage of because they don't even know what's going on.
Mm,
But we need
hmm.
to somehow heal the divide between the masculine and the feminine.
Yes.
It's crucial, and there's really a lot of suffering that's gone on both sexes. I hear about sexual abuse probably out of 3 out of every 4 clients I work with,
Hmm.
mostly women, but also quite a few of the men as
Also
well.
men. Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. And it's almost like, you're a kid, you don't know, you're not responsible. Um, but it's an old story, and it's in every walk and culture, it seems, not just one thing. It's
Yeah.
like nationalities, religions, it's an old story. How do we change that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's such an important point. Thank you for bringing that up. We really, really need healing between the masculine and the feminine on so many levels. And we need to really recognize this intergenerational trauma, the trauma in the lineages and in the past. And I think real healing has to be getting at that and helping that, because like they've done, for example, studies with mice where they will unfortunately like traumatize, like subject a mouse to extreme stress, and then they'll see the epigenetics and the gene expression change in the grandchildren and the great grandchildren and the great great grandchildren of those mice in a lab. And it's the same thing with humans. And I think it's really valuable to recognize what you just shared. All of our ancestors at some point in time probably were the victim of rape, meaning all of our ancestors, like we have that in our lineage. And another place where that is true that isn't talked about much is actually slavery. A lot of people don't know that slavery was super widely practiced in ancient Greece, ancient Rome, in ancient Europe, and it wasn't racial at all, meaning that if you are so-called white, if you're from European descent, you almost certainly have ancestors that were slaves. If you're from any part in the world, you almost certainly have ancestors that were slaves. It's not a racial thing. If we look at the big historical picture, it's an unfortunate part of humanity that hopefully we can evolve beyond. But that's there in our DNA too.
Yeah, and war culture.
And war, absolutely.
War, like, because, and I did watch that TV series, The Vikings, which is like really, really violent, but it's also really spiritual, and I really liked it.
I love that show. Yeah.
But I did almost notice, like, how can you get people to go and like fight these barbaric wars with these primitive things, and you think you're going to get really messed up. It's not like you're going to be okay in a couple days, How do you get people to do that? And I really think that maybe there's this psychedelic component, like that you get this DMT rush or something from facing death like that.
Right.
But another thing that I think will help the healing is we need to make it okay for little boys as well as little girls. But I think the little boys got squashed to express their emotions. How many kids get told, like, big boys don't cry, big girls don't cry. Because, crying can be really healing and therapeutic. And, I'll give you something to cry about. Yeah. So we need to work on it at every level, and it's big work. And, right now we still see, our sisters across the globe wanting to throw off the hijab, and you can get assassinated for that. Like, whoa, like
that's real. Yeah.
That's real too. So I'm hopeful, and I'm so grateful to be on this show because we get to talk about things like this. But, and, even, cannabis, I want to say something about cannabis, that it's the female plant. If you think about it, the dairy industry, it's all the females,
interesting.
The poultry industry, it's all the females. And then like cannabis is all the females. They're kind of like all imprisoned.
Oh, man.
And I think really what would be good for the planet is to have the hemp plant, male and female, growing, because the hemp seed is one of the second highest source of protein next to soybeans, and it could really be nourishing. It could be a plant-based food protein source for many people. We could be making oil out of the seed that could be fueling our automobiles and our airplanes. We could be building breathable that doesn't burn buildings out of the hemp fibers. So I still see that even that plant is being enslaved and kept away. But really, if it were flourishing everywhere in the world, they could have cottage industries of making whatever it is, rope and oil and plastic and paint and building material.
Yeah. And I think we are, thanks for sharing that about cannabis. That's interesting. And I hadn't thought about that in terms of cows and chickens and all the eggs. And yeah, you're right. But I think we are, I think there's a lot of things happening, obviously, but one thing is social media is distorting our views of reality. So when you talk about healing the masculine and feminine, I agree 100%. And I think when we spend a lot of time online, the world looks much worse than it actually is. And when you just go out and talk to people, go to the farmer's market, go to a concert, go to a restaurant, like go hang out with your friends in real life, get offline, it's like most of the people, if you're listening to this, like most of the people in your life are probably pretty peaceful and willing to talk to you, hopefully. And so the online is just distorting us, and it's making us crazy in different ways. But it's if I make a clip where I say all women this or all men that, it's more likely to go viral because it's controversial and it gets comments, and it's like, so the social media is constantly feeding these divisions, and we need to somehow stop doing that.
Well, I know. I think in journalism they say if it bleeds, it reads.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know,
same
and
thing. Yeah.
something my friend Mo Siegel, the founder of Celestial Seasonings, used to say. I don't know if he made this up, but the world isn't worse. It's just that the news coverage is better. So
Okay.
you
Yeah.
know that like we're hearing about things, whereas we did before the computer, we wouldn't even know about a war going on in some faraway country, but we're able to report, and the soldiers are able to
Mm-hmm.
make TikToks from the battlefield, and there's all that too. So I think where we put our consciousness is really important,
Yes.
and so often the literature is about, like, there's a whole genre of horror, like what can we do to be more scared. And like I said, I admit I watched the Vikings and the Last Kingdom. Both are
Uh-huh.
very violent, but it seems that violence has been part of our history. But again, where do we go from here? And so we don't want to put too much of only dwelling on things that are about horror and murder and captivity and pain, and like
Right. Right.
the things that are going to give us hope. And I recently read for an author a great audiobook, and it's also in print. It's called Veriditas by Aaron William Perry. And it's going to sound crazy, but it's about AI merging with the mycelium of the mushroom to take over the healing for the good of the planet,
Wow.
and making it environmental and cleaning up our water and our pollution and our mess. I mean, something's got to happen.
Mm.
And we know
That's really
that a lot
interesting.
of the solutions have gotten squashed when people come up with a great invention for alternative energy or something that's, really beneficial. Very often they get censored.
Mm.
So we're going to keep doing our best.
So you think there's potential for AI to integrate with psilocybin in terms of the spores
I
or
hear
the
that that's
mycelial
possible.
network, or maybe other mushrooms?
I
There are
hear
definitely
that that's
mushrooms.
possible.
There are definitely mushrooms developed that are able to clean up oil spills to some degree and things like that. I think that's amazing. Yeah.
So according to the author, that is possible. And it's really good. You can listen to me read it to you on Audible, or you can
Okay.
read it. It takes place in Boulder and Crestone and Aspen.
Huh. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. I think like when we get into these topics, there's so much negative and there's also so much positive, and it's this mixture, and that's the times that we're living in. And I think one thing that is for sure is that a lot of people, most of us probably, myself probably too, we're addicted to drama and trauma.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so when we turn on a movie, yeah, we want to see the explosions and the violence and the sex and the betrayal and then in our own lives, we're kind of addicted to that. And if it's an interesting thought experiment to like sit, maybe meditate for a while and imagine being in a like heavenly realm where everything is perfect and blissful and good. And how long could you stay there before you start to feel bored? And doesn't that tell you something interesting about the human psyche, that we would get bored if we were in heaven?
Well, we definitely, I feel like movies are such a powerful thing. It's like so large. Wouldn't it be nice if there were movies that would inspire us to
Yes.
do better and be good? And certainly, very often the message is to overcome adversity.
Yeah.
So, but again, I know that we went to see the Bob Dylan movie,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the preview, and I love the movie, but the previews to it were all the worst possible thing that could happen, like blow it up and breaking glass and smashing and
Hmm.
explosions. Like, why do that to yourself? And then that affects your dreams and your meditation and your consciousness. So we want to put things into our consciousness that are healthy and healing. It's almost like it's not just junk food that we eat, it's junk food for the mind.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I recommend to people, if they ask me about it, if I'm working with them and they're considering a psychedelic experience, do a kind of information diet at least a week, at least 3 days before. Like, don't watch horror movies. Don't like take care of, like you just said, what information you're putting into your consciousness, because that psychedelics reveal what is in our mind and our psyche.
That's what it means, to delve into the soul.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. Yeah. So I that's a great idea.
Same thing with meditation, with our dreams, with just the thoughts we have in the background. Like the information we're taking in is affecting all of that, and it's really making up the world we live in.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And creating a harmonious living space. And know
Hmm.
that, one way that we make a difference is we vote with our dollars. When we say, I'm going to buy those organic apples, or I'm going to buy the herbal remedy before I try a pharmaceutical. We're voting for that field of lavender or aloe vera or echinacea or whatever it is to be there. And those flowers are helping the pollinators. So it's more than your choice could be affecting all kinds of things, even to a microscopic level.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's good to just remember that and not to beat yourself up about it, but just bring it to mind and see what differences we can make. And one of the interesting things I've learned about you is that you don't drive. You don't have a driver's license.
I've never learned to drive a car. Well, they didn't teach driving at Miss Hall School for young ladies. And then, I lived in the commune in the Ozarks, it was a 4-wheel drive road only because we were growing some things there that we were hoping the police would never come and find. So, and the 2 husbands I've had stick shifts, 4-wheel drive. And, I moved to Boulder in 77 and I live right downtown and I walk to the bus station. I get on the bus, go to the airport, fly to Iceland and teach a workshop. I mean, I get around, but Julian, you've given me rides more than once from different parties. And I did meet my second husband. He gave me a ride home from a Navarro concert, many years ago. I'm not with him any longer, but we're friends. So hi, sailor.
Well, that proves that you don't have to be able to drive to get around.
But I also think it's a lot, things were a lot safer years ago. Usually if I go to a party and I often want to come home earlier because I am an elder to say the least. I just kind of keep my eye on the door and I see someone leaving and my bargaining chip is you can ask me any herbal remedy questions or health questions on the way and I'll, fill your cup.
Amazing. Well, if someone's listening to this, do you want to recommend just 1 or 2 or 3 simple things they could walk outside and do right now?
Well, I really want to say that learn to eat the dandelions. I've written a whole book called Dandelion Medicine. Okay, there's lots of recipes in there. Learn to identify a few plants growing around you. Dandelion's one of my favorites. And you can eat the leaves, you can eat the flowers. They're high in lutein. You can eat the roots. Last week in my class, we boil the stems like noodles and toss them with garlic and olive oil.
Oh, nice.
Can even do that. I'm also going to say other things you can do. Eat all the colors of the rainbow. The American diet has gotten rather beige. So, we've got lycopene in the red watermelon and the tomatoes and beta carotene in the winter squash. Eat all the colors, blueberries and elderberries and plums. And greens are right there in the middle. So I'm also going to say, can you eat a salad a day and make your own dressing with extra virgin olive oil? Those would be a few simple things to do. I'm also big on, writing everything down. If I say I'm going to do something, I write it down because I think a lot of people lapse in responsibility and they'll say, I'll send you that link or I'll call you tomorrow, but they didn't write it down. So I'm a big believer in if you think it, ink it.
Nice. That's great. Well, it's amazing you've written so many books. I'm excited to see this new one.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, Julian, bless your heart. Please check me out, BrigitteMars.com. And you'll find lots of articles, recipes, remedies on my website. And you can follow me on TikTok, too, if you're into the social media thing.
Amazing. Thank you.